Here we go. It is that time again, restorative yoga. So line up your props. So you have your bolster horizontally across that mat, and your block is directly in front of the bolster. You want to sit on that little flat block, so it's at the lowest height. And when you angle your back onto your bolster, you're going to assess the distribution of your tailbone, right? You want to get a sense of that tail space, the relaxed leg space, and then be certain you have some support for your brain. And that, I think the 2 blankets actually feels really helpful right now. Some days I'll feel like having 1, but as long as you're comfortable in your neck, you feel like you can wiggle your head a tiny bit side to side for ease. And then get a sandbag before the legs lower down. And working that support, so when you have the sand, right, you're strengthening that back body, but this is clearly working on elongating the front spaces and this aspect of sensing the thighs, and they're in a resting position. So instead of trying to force and get antsy with pushing through your feet, feel the orientation of the feet so they're in a wide stance. If the feet roll out and that brings you a little more peace in the front of the hip bones, take that stance today. And if the toes turning in causes a little pressure in the knees, go back to whatever is the most casual. So the front line of the thighs can comfortably lengthen. Get a belt. And once the belt is held, open out the chest and feel when your arms flow open, that not only do the arms work on moving the shoulders, we do have a little bit of responsibility today to work on the anterior and the posterior shoulder. And with that focal point of resting your eyes now, so it's from focus to relaxing the eyes, elongate that core chamber and feature the breath. Feel the arch. Feel the comfortable release of the front of the hips. Now, if the feet are still in that external, they're tipping a little bit outwards, just let that be. And relate for the time into your arms and that armpit chest. So I'm holding onto the belt. And as the hands slide out wide on the belt, there's this concentration of muscles. Okay, so give a few moments of feeling the grip and then that easeful release of the arm pile on the floor. It's kind of like you have this arm pile pushed out from your chest. And excellent work getting your arms to the floor, right? If they have a little challenge to get down and to hold on to the belt in goalpost pose, we're changing seasons to cactus to goalpost, you might feel there's a little resistance. So we'll now start to shed that grip and let the arms open completely. So they extend out. There may be a little bend because that's what elbows tend to do. But when that flow of inhale filters through the upper chest and the exhalation relaxes out of the mouth. Few more breaths here. Swallow. Clear the passageway of your throat. Now with the upper body remaining the same, we'll actually need to move an arm to slide the sandbag off. So we're sand free for the moment. And I want you to slide the feet in so when the knees work their way to bending, you're automatically working with this field of the arch of the back. It's almost as if the leg's straight, you got used to that arch. Maybe in the beginning it's a little challenging. But now when we rebalance the pelvis, we're going to bring the right knee in towards the chest. So we're going to do what I like to call as reclining marches. And you alternate, but when you lift up the other leg now and you switch sides, curious as to how you could measurably get a little length on that side of the spine when you bring the knee in. So we might start to kind of break up our pace. Some of us will go fast, some will go a little slower. So once you find your marching pace, feel that the foot that's on the floor is highly intelligent as it connects to the back of the pelvis. You want to feel that pressing of the foot and that kind of a little bit of a scoop in the back. So you're working with that, trying to let the spine lengthen, right? Not completely flex because the shoulders are back. You can't entirely cat shape your spine, but give a few more of these marches. And the place I tend to be curious about is my core control. So for those of you that want to kind of play with your core control, you might bring both of the feet up off the floor, knees lift, and just find what amount of lift, not necessarily tucking the knees too close towards your center, but just the right amount of lift to access the corridor strength, that thoracic chamber. Good, so get a feel of those knees in that bending pattern. Not too much and not too little so that they help the back. And then as you lower down the feet, spread the feet apart, lift the heels, push down into the balls of the feet so you get a feel of that pressure. And you're going to lift up a tiny bit so that you can just wiggle the block away. Now, because we got the block here, why don't we put it overhead, okay? And we'll roll to our left. So we're kind of all ready to go with this side work. So once you get to that side, you're going to put a ball on the inside of the right leg. And as you lengthen, why not feel your sketch before you start loading up? Feel when you lie into your side, pre-sand. And the reason I mention this possibility is when I observe this angle on people in class, sometimes I'll notice there'll be some that let the elbow really, really bend, and part of it's restriction and shoulder. But some will let the ribs kind of turn, and that's what gives an enhanced reach in the shoulder, the anterior part, front. So you decide, you might want to work on your lateral, your side anyway, focusing. So get a sandbag if you're using that. Carefully apply, no rush. And feeling when you are even applying the sand, your breath. Kind of balance your breathing, feeling if you can put that sand where you access your breath. No requirement to have your hand overhead if that's troubling for your shoulder. You could keep it on the sand or on the bolster. Or some people might have the hand behind their head. And just taking in information about this inner arm sensation. Right? So this is a fairly lymphy space, right? The armpit, chest. So trying to work on those tunnels of circulation in the arms, getting them to have some fluidity. And then let's find the shape and be pure emphasis of the ease in the side. That could be either side, so that you're giving your body permission to truly settle on the props, letting the body ease and breathe. Expansion, equaling some spaciousness. Feeling that left leg, right? The left leg at the base, it gets it has limits, right? Because the bolster is going to stop it from going any farther, which is a nice foundation. So that right leg also probably has limits. Your excursion of moving the right thigh back is fairly limited, but the feeling of its restriction is what's, I think, interesting. So if you can stretch it back, even if you lose the ball for a moment or so, it doesn't stay completely attached under. Just kind of notice that range that you have. It's not just leg, it's also arm. So you want to have this equilibrium of the usage of your arm and your leg, even if they're both kind of supported on something. Okay. So the reason I'm mentioning this pattern with the right leg is that we're going to swing the leg path into Badakarasana in a moment. So it's just kind of loosening up these this traction in the joint and in the fibers that are kind of in balance right now. So we're working to find balance, I suppose. So the next pose will be symmetrical. So we'll take the sand aside and you'll let your bone structure kind of roll into that left side. So you're going to shift and then taking the maybe ball away momentarily, turn. Let's see, we're going to need our block in the back. We're going to need our belt. All right, let's do this. We'll be prim and proper about it. So we'll take our blanket on the top away and then turn the bottom blanket across. Yeah, we might as well do it the right way. Put the bolster so it pushes back up and tips on the bottom blanket, but it's lower than maybe you're traditionally practicing it. Sometimes we start class with the bottom blanket rolled, but this one it'll be quarter full flat. So turn so that you're facing, well, you can face any way you want, but your sacrum is on touching the bolster's edge. It's not on the bolster, but right at the edge. Gather those blocks and place them under the legs. And then get the feel that when you have your belt, keep your ball nearby. You want to kind of notice, okay, before you get kind of using your props a lot, maybe feel your body's shape. Just notice I sit, my knees are out, they're on top of the same height. So that's important to kind of access how the spine lifts up out of that space. Maybe it does, maybe it hunches. And then as you buckle up, you want to find that support of the big loop overhead around your hips and below the hips. Scoop up those feet with the belt. And I like to have my buckle nearby so I have access to getting in and out of the pose or making it a little more interesting. And you never know how you change the way to get into this. You might even lower back with the belt slightly loose kind of low. And then once you're on your bolster, then you can decide, well, maybe I want to make that a little tighter and kind of maneuver it for the structure of balance. It's fun to play with these things anyway. I'm going to go a little low with the block and just kind of see how that responds in my back muscles, because I want to strengthen those back spaces today. And the seat is kind of in flux between the props, right? It's in flux between your pelvis and your feet right now. It usually is during the day. That's kind of an influx place, but it's not inflexible in this pose, right? Because you've got your knees out, your hips are opening. So if this is becoming a pretty comfortable shape for you to practice it. It's a hip opener. So sand goes across or it goes straight down, you choose. And, there's no perfection that we are trying to angle for, but I want you to sense what is the right balance for your bones to feel some equilibrium with the legs, the ankles. So start your scanning with your feet and then work your way up gradually. And the arms get to release and they rest. And that exercise in repeating breath gives you the capacity to flow the belly muscles and feeling their movement tracking, maybe with the breath, and maybe some of the underlying movements in the belly are not with the breath. Sometimes there's digestion occurring or settling. And then start to feel that breath emphasis and consciously opening the front of the shoulders, the waist, breathing in slow, and exhaling out completely. Now with the arms motion, we're going to bring the hands so they're straight over the heart space, interlace your fingers at their roots, and then turn the palms inside out. Just simply turn them so the hands push up together and reaching. Breathing supportively with the angle of the arms and the shoulders. So we might feel that momentum. And then also there's, you try to go farther usually. That's a predicted path of posing, right? You might try. But feel if you can do just a little bit less than overdoing this in the shoulders. So they are contributing to the settling experience, the generating balance. Hold the elbows. So elbow crisscross, reach around for the elbows. If that's a tough one, right, there's no requirement. You can bring your arms so they hold onto the forearms or they relax overhead. So elbow is one choice, and then switch to crossing. Elbow crisscross. letting go. And then when we switch into the knees motion, I want you to first unbuckle, and secondary will be the sand shift. So first unbuckle so that there's a slight shift in the pressure on the skin that way. And then start to scoot the feet. They start when they're simply, the soles are trying to generate communication right here, the soles of the feet. There's a little bit of that. They may not completely push in. Mine don't push in together, but I can feel their connection. And then when the soles of the feet are touching to the ground, and you might have to get that belt aside. It does get stuck on you sometimes. And, feel if you can lift up the right leg and cross the ankle to the left knee, and then find that ball, place it to the outer left thigh, right at the top, kind of smush it in. If you have a block nearby, it might be something you end up kind of using relative to the pose. But, feel what it's like with the sand. I want you to turn the sand so it's across. So if your sand is lengthwise, switch it so it's across, right? So when I shift my weight into my ball, so my legs kind of zigzag over to the left, I'm finding that the key to help us out with this, an observation, is to have that left knee really bending. It's not kind of slack. You did slide the foot towards your seat. And then when you let the leg tilt towards the left, you hold that right knee. You might want to get rid of your sand by now, or you might decide, oh, it's somewhat settling. So today we'll have the option to keep it so we can maintain the fundamental pattern of that strengthening for the back. All it takes is putting some weights on, some sandbags. Okay, now when you are holding on to that knee, feeling that you're going across the center towards the left with the left hand holding. So since the left hand is generally on the left side, most of the time it's probably on that side of the body. When you're pulling the leg across, that arm has already had the habit of being there for so long that when you try to access that right knee to go across, there's resistance in the hip. So you can either relax on the side of the left foot, you don't have to be on the bottom. But I like the sandbag though, because I keep my center of gravity, this mid body right now is not flinching, it's not twisting. So all the power is in my hip. Okay, so change sides, just be sort of casual about it. You've got a second side. What would you do? Change the crossing, take the ball to the right hip, upper, outer hip. I tend to put the ball to the outer hip and then kind of push it under. So when I lean into it, my body weight kind of grabs the ball, and it's kind of in a clever way, but it pushes down. One side, my bottom foot is a little more instinctual about pivoting open. But I think one thing you might remember is before this pose, we had our feet together in Badakarasana, and that's the same footing you kind of want here right now. So you don't want to lose some of those elements of awareness in your muscle memory. Hold the left knee. Yeah, this side might feel a little different. It could be some other factors, but you can remove the sand if it doesn't feel right on the second side. You may have been without it for this whole time, I don't know. So reach the in-breath to the belly. Seems like it's far away from your nose down to the belly, but it's very fast tube of movement, right? And as you oxygenate. Resting the eyes. And limiting your external influences still. That's part of setting up for practice, right? Finding that you're here, you're centering, breathing slow. It's tempting to circle the foot. In some ways, the top foot. It might be best to stay so easeful that your arm is passive on the left side. Your right hand is pulling that left leg across. And then shift. So we're going to shift our hand away, unwind, roll to that right hip to side sage on the other side, that you uncross, and then get a feel. I know you've got some props around you, that some that are, basically on. So to move our bolster, we'll need to get the sand off on this one. So come around. So we're still with it here. This is tempting for me to do side sage like this because it's already set. But I know the reality is, even if it seems minor, add the same prop plan. This is your prop plan. And I think this part of the blankets this way is not required. You could always play with them this way. That's an idea too, because then the block would be a little higher. You can play with that too. So there is a little bit of shift. Maybe you did it on the last side already. Now, without a doubt, the sand will be useful. So begin that stacking experience of weight on the left side. And then when your ribs are centering, they can feel like a network that's, well, they are a network, but feeling that it is a kind of a barrel, rib barrel. So your barrel kind of rolls side to side, your rib barrel. But as that left arm moves overhead, enjoy the sense of, well, I can shift my hips, I can let my head tilt down, and that length through the left side. Yeah, if you get into the shape and it feels like the ball under your leg is not in the right spot, you can kind of maneuver it with your right foot sometimes. So you don't have to get all the way up and down again. So be a little creative on your prop maneuvering. And then when that left arm goes over, settle your rear, right? Let your hips and then what's below the hips kind of relax. Feeling the weight, breathing slow. Feeling the movement of breath in your ribs. That repeat performance time and time again. Okay, now with this left side in some sense of reach, we're going to, if you can, let the left arm branch open the chest so it swings open. And if that's a little bit restrictive or it hurts, then you practice turning towards the right in the beginning, right, this position. So turn towards the right, bring the left knee in, and now let's take a seat. Well, let's see your props around you. Let's move the blankets at the back so they're turned horizontal. If you already have that like that, you'll just kind of pull them in. I think the two blankets will be nice to have. And then when you sit up on your bolster, we're going to kind of motion so that the left knee is pointing out. You're in a simple seated shape on your bolster. And you have the sandbag on the top of that thigh. If you're not using any weight today, no big deal. But you might like to access that weight on the left inner leg in the beginning so you can feel how that knee is pointing down. So the right leg is going to do one of two options. This is a fairly intermediate start with the sitting position. One option is to cross the right leg entirely over the left. So the foot is on the floor on the other side, of course, or else your foot would go, but it's gonna, or if the leg doesn't like that, the knee's not in a happy space today with that activity level, you can put your foot on a block in front. That would work pretty good too. So this is, for some of us, too much pull in the knee, right? Too much pull in the hip. So this is a little bit easier access. Okay, so find what works for you. If you're going to kind of grit and bear it, and you can do this, but it's not the most tolerable sensation in the knee, then start out so we're all kind of in the same level of attention here, where you hold your hands under that right knee and you work on that delivery of sitting upright, just pure and simple. You're not listening to too many conversations, you're just sitting upright. And you feel that the weight of the spine is not as significant as the muscles' attentiveness to helping you sit up tall. I don't know how often you think of the weight of your spine, but, or the weight of its habits. Okay, so turn to the right, bring your right hand back. I need a block in addition. So I'm gonna just put that back behind my blanket and then hook the left elbow to that right leg and twist. Okay. So keep in mind your spine has habits. So if this is quite altering for your back, you know, not that your back has a psychology, but in your back, your habits, then work to the concentration of appropriateness in the moment, right? So if this is too much, you know, purposeful lift for you, then maybe you do a little milder version. You hold the right knee with your left hand and you present the twist to your right side. Okay, so give it a few moments. If you need to come forward and hold onto the knee and breathe, and then take the twist on an exhale to the right and just concentrate on, oh, my spine does have resistance. Muscles along the spine. They want to fatigue and take it easy. Okay, so when you turn back forward, inevitably you can't wait to do that. Move the right leg out. Okay, so it reaches on the ground, straight open. You don't have to keep it in the air. Okay, so right leg stretches out. I like to kind of readjust my seat on my bolster and then put a block or ball under that left knee. So you have just a nice comfort. You might scoot your left foot a little farther forward, but I still reposition that sand on the left thigh. And then take a belt and bend your right knee to hook the belt if you need to, hook it under your foot. And get a feel that you kind of turn towards your right leg, holding on to the belt, and feel that you pull the skin on the bottom of that right foot. And you pull the foot so the foot is really nicely flexed. I mean, is the foot flexed or what happens here at the belt? So you're pulling to deliver that circulation. Okay. So I want you to move the belt so it's together with the right hand holding onto it now. And then when you turn to your left, you're going to bend your right elbow. And this to me feels kind of robot-like. So when I hold on to the belt, I want to lean into it and kind of find a way that is kind of soothing to me. So holding the belt and hooking the elbow on the outside of the leg doesn't work great for my back. So I have my elbow on top or on the inside. On top might be your best spot. And you might not have your arm touching your leg right now. It might just be barely there. So lean into the right side. Let the left arm spring up to the waist. And you might be, you know, if you're looking towards how you're appearing, it might look like your head's this place, the arm is this place, the foot is over here. It's all craziness. So pull with definition with your right hand. And then let your head turn to your right leg so the neck can ease. And feeling as you come into this side ledge, the left arm goes behind you, and the side ledge of the waist is opening up. Right, so get a good feel of that side ledge sensation. You're going to feel that you're pulling, and your heart rate may switch. You might notice some seriousness to the experience in your breathing muscles, like there's effort. And now feel how you hold onto that belt, how that pulls you. Okay, so with some care, because this left side has been yanked, right? You've yanked this left side a little bit. So I want you to be caring here how we loosen this side up. You might bring your left hand to that left side of the back, and then you're moving the left side skin of the back downwards towards your hip bone, and then your spine is coming back up. Take the belt off. It's kind of nice to have the hand on the belt because it pulls. And then move your right foot forward on the block or on the floor. It doesn't really matter that much. The block for me is just easier. And it happened to be there. So feel this back. Move into a little bit of flexion. So let your head tip. Feel that flexion in the back. Not necessarily just spine, because that might be a little stiff, but feel the back rounded shape. Okay, and then as you lift up for a mini lift, you're going to take the sand off, and we'll reach that right leg back. Okay, oh my gosh, it's going to go behind you. So when you take that right leg back, your left foot pulls closer to the bolster, and you move the right leg back and kick a block away. So sense when the length is in the front of the right hip bone now. So it's been kind of an excursion around the hip socket. So as you lower down, you might want to use your blocks. You might go, I got my elbows on the ground. I love that. So feel when you can get your direction of the right hip bone comfortable. You don't have to be pushing on your props with your hips. You don't have to be, stapling your left leg into your bolster. You want to feel that there is kind of some surface movement in the glide of the hip on both sides. I think I'm starting to get this shape where I feel some equilibrium in both legs, not just the leg that's kind of held up in the pose, the left leg right now. It's kind of a holding leg, right? We won't give this pose a name because everyone kind of knows it and some have a feeling about it. So see if we can let that go. And as the length of the torso, the front space reaches. This is a great one to play with, how your front space is in neutral versus pushing and forcing massive amounts of arch. So feel when it's in neutral that you're pulsing through breath in the middle. That belly expands, belly goes into contraction, alternating. Now we're going to come back to hands and knees. So since there's two, that's where we're going to. But as the hands slide back, can you kind of repurpose here a little bit of your back muscle? So pushing my chin forward might not be the best mood for my back sense to be sturdy. So I want to try to keep my head centered, like it's a limb. Right, so think about that as that limbic brain. And then when you are toes under on the back foot, it does seem good to bring the left foot back and kind of alternate. So your head's going to naturally shift down. Now this is more of a walking your dog's pose. So you're scooping a bit with the knees to alternate bending them. Now, kind of liberate what needs to be, right? So if you decide you need to bring your knees down to your blanket, that's fine. If you need to reset and come down anyway to get your hands wider, it's hard to widen your hands once you're upside down. That could be a bit of a trauma. But I like to feel the calves really stretching. That's kind of exciting to explore here. So get a feel as that reach happens, and then step the feet a little wider than hips distance. Lower the knees down. If you want 2 blankets or 1, you choose. I'm kind of getting into using the 2 lately. It feels kind of interesting in the hips. It's a little more buoyant, okay? But that could change anytime. Decision making should be individual. So toes relaxed, and if the arms are getting fatigued here, turn the fingers out a little bit so that you might feel like you have more energy in the shoulders. And round your back, scoop the tail, and let your chin move towards your chest. Inhale, arch the back. Okay, now feel if you alternate these patterns of spine movement, you kind of let your mind focus on something different than the pressure, right, to the wrist. So feel how the movement occurs, chin to chest, hips move back, spine arches. Okay, now next time you scoop, you'll bring your hands to your bolster and you'll just push it forward. And I would be a little limited how much you push out. So you're not going to, kind of slide away. You want to have your arms on there and your head down between. And so my bolster is close enough that my forearms are on it. And when I lower down my head, it's next to the bolster. Oh, my shoulders really feel that. You don't need to add more, but we could add more to the shoulder mix, but let's see how this works. Okay. Now, as you turn the bolster, so it's straight underneath you forward, okay? You're gonna lower down and you're on the bolster now. Your whole body is leaning down onto it. So feel your hands open. This is a good exercise after putting weight into the palms and the wrists, is to have a different perspective on your body weight into your hands now, because you've got a bolster holding quite a bit of it. So feel if you can bring your arms back besides you, like you're kind of swimming through water here, a little seal-like. So let the knees separate just enough. You still need the blanket under them comfortably, but separating. And then as the body weight is onto that bolster, notice what part has to push into the bolster for you to strengthen your back. Okay. Now let's lower down. And I think right now my gut sense is to get my blocks. So I'm going to put my blocks so they kind of, I don't know if I can show this to you easily. Well, I'm prone on my body, but I turn my blocks, they're kind of pivoting in like this, and my elbows are onto them when I'm on the bolster, okay? So my elbows are wide. Okay, so now elbows wide, remember we're doing back strengthening work. So have your elbows projecting open, and then feel what it's like to get your body just set up on the props like this. So can you bring your head to neutral so your neck is not getting so jazzed up? So your crown faces towards the front of the space. Seems like you're doing very little, but there's enough back strength work here. Okay, now feel if you can press into your elbows and lift up into your spine, like you're trying to lift your head a little bit, but I don't want you to pull your neck or push your head back. So feel from the spine's energy up. So I'm pushing down to my elbows, and you can feel the spine kind of moving into itself and the back is strengthening. Okay, just get a feel for that. Now, this doesn't mean you have to strain pushing into your feet or hooking your toes under. It's purely a bit of breathing intensity into your bolster and arching the spine. We could make it more challenging, but let's make it so it delivers into the bones nicely. It's just a healthy strength. Okay, now when I lower down my head and my hands are going to push the blocks a little bit out, hands under the shoulders, fingers, well, somewhat under the shoulders, right? They're down on the floor. Now my elbows kind of swing in towards my sides. Now, can you reach the crown of your head? I know I pushed my head up a little bit, but reach the crown towards the front space. Okay, now your back has natural curves anyway. So when you push down and you start to lift up through that back muscle chamber, you're going to lift up to up dog. This might get to a place where it feels pretty good. Up dog with blocks in your hands is really good. So you can always try that too. I really like this. It's a little deeper, but my hands are farther up and my arms are short enough that this just gives me a feeling of a new body. And I'll use those props when they're helpful. So you might try it. You might refrain from it. It's up to you. But get the feel of that waist fullness. Feeling the waist. Okay, now come back to table. Shift your knees in together so that the spine is like, oh, that feels nice. The spine is supported, a little bit of a cat spine. Step the left foot to the top left corner and then lengthen. Now be a little careful here how far that left knee is pointing over your ankle. So I want you to connect. So the left foot is turning out a little bit here. It's got that rotation. Be safe, right, with your knee angle. I mean, if you're comfortable with it just over the ankle, that's fine. Okay, now we're going to do something in between these two sides. So I want you to shift back, left knee back as the hands are besides the bolster on floor, toes under, lift up the knees. And then as you putter through your feet towards the blankets, you're going to walk the hands back to take a forward bend. And do those relative habits that you have, which might be to bend your knees, to scoop up your elbows, or to let your head hang in service to stretching your back. Yeah, so less pulling of the neck up and more releasing the back line, letting your head nod side to side or in and out, releasing the neck. Yeah, enjoy the sensation of belly movement upside down. And just feeling the weight of your head down. Yeah, keeping that perspective of being downward, walk the hands back forward towards those blocks, and then feel if you can do your step up with maybe your hips back first. See if you can work on momentum. So I have my feet close together, and then I'm going to step the right foot to the top right corner and then angle my left knee down. Or if that doesn't work for you, you come back to you go from knees up to knees to the blankets, and then take the right foot stepping out. Perfect, right? So you can go either way. Blocks are not required. It depends on your arm length, huh? They may feel like they push you back. So you decide, blocks or hands on the floor. blocks on your hands or the other. And the right knee, it's got a little bit of a pivot. So the inner thigh has a full stretch on that right leg. Well, actually, I feel it on both legs. I feel top of the back thigh and the inner right thigh. So feel how you balance your waist. There's always something to be a little more curious about, or to simply exist and feel your body for the sake of itself in repair mode. Right? The class is usually about restoring, repairing, replenishing. And now shift back and come into moving the bolster across. It's like, how many ways can we move our props around? That's kind of how this class goes, isn't it? And then scoot your right foot, toe heel it to the left side of your mat. So across, it's in front of the bolster. Bring the knee forward. Okay, so you do get the sense now in this other side of the right hip being kind of pushed in towards the shape. Okay, we'll say it, pigeon. So the knee is angled out. Now, you know, what's interesting to me is when we had those lunges with the knee out, just a moment ago, it's a similar angle of the knee here for these. So it's kind of fun to sense your balance points in your hips. I like to lower down my arms in a shape either on the blocks or on the floor. And you can motion your breath into that rib space so that you don't lose the connection of expanding and centering. And then maybe your head, I mean, it comes up a lot, doesn't it? The neck, the weight, the brain. You know, if you're going to walk around on two feet most of the time instead of all fours, it's going to be an issue. So this is a good time to just practice as if you're on all fours often, right? Just feel your head move. You might do things like that during class, especially in your home practice. It's a little bit more comfortable to do that. Just kind of search through, you know, massaging in the neck or feeling your head shifting, tilting, and just becoming aware. I don't think you cannot be aware of your right hip here. Okay, so that right leg is externally, right, and internally working. So we'll lean our weight into it and swing the left leg forward. And hope you can see me easily here. So now as I position here, I'm going to move the right knee down, put a sandbag on the right thigh. Okay, and then cross that left leg over the right, and be rather active on how you want that position of the leg to. And one side you might notice, this leg really holds itself strong and sturdy. One hip is different than the other hip. So I would be find some emphasis of just being in your skin and feeling the difference in the bones, actually being in your bones. And feel that layer of conscious control here. So holding on to the left knee could be useful. Get a sense of lifting up the waist. And then turning to your left. So one side might feel like it delivers different. You know, this side I don't really feel like I want that block behind me, but you might like a block under your hand. Getting a hold of a sandbag handle can be nice for this position. I just can't do that without my shoulder rolling in. So once I get the sandbag handle, my shoulder rolls in. So some of us just find that our mechanics are gifted in certain ways. So you do what feels comfortable for what you start to learn is good proper alignment It's not wrong to find a little proper balance. And if you can come into the shape, into the seated spinal twist, maybe with your eyes relaxed. Maybe you tilt your head a little bit, feeling your head maybe rotate. And with the breath, that gives you that massive strength to concentrate on the twist. And I know we tend to start to work our arm muscles a lot to hold this. They get drained. So try to work your core as much as you could. The core that could. Keep hydrated with that breathing as well. It's hydrating for and nourishing, right? Mobilizing the spine. And then as you turn back forward, move the left leg out. And so you're in a seated, right knee still is bending. It's open. I've got the ball under the right knee. And then I get a belt and I reach it under that left foot. And you might find that when you push out with your foot, you hold with your hand on the belt. And then you just start cruising into this flesh on that right side, lengthening, right? It's definitely gets kind of held up there. So you might do some very mild pulsing, but I would be just very insightful for yourself on how you hold the belt and then you start to travel into this side bend. Right? So think of side sage, right? You would have your bolster under your side, and then that sort of gives you the lead to just go for the reach of your torso. But here we've got some added things, right? So we have the elbow, we're holding a belt, we're pulling, and then that rotation happens through the waistband. Okay, your head could turn to look to your left leg. I don't think your head has to look at the left leg. It could be eyes resting. And then the arm could go behind your back to give that sense of circulation there. I know it's hard not to effort and to try to pull down further to the left leg. So somewhere in between is likely kind of a lofty space for your rib cage. We'll find out when we get on our back very soon. We'll see how that waist is kind of complying with the movement. But you can massage with your knuckles on that right side of the back waist. That can feel nice to run your knuckles down and towards the very track of the sides of the spine. Those muscles that are really strengthening today in these poses. So as you hold on firm to the belt, you're going to maybe turn your head to the right and then come up. Feel resistance holding the belt, tugging, feel resistance in the core. So this might be nice for you to have a hold of the belt when you sit up so that you can integrate strength or basic general holding. And then as you pull on that left leg, you pull your foot in, and then you simply put it in front of you, taking the belt off. And you might just take a moment here and just kind of lean forward. Last time I put my foot on the block, and you should repeat that. Be helpful. You can move your sand if you don't want it on that right leg, but giving a sense of full support in your back. Yeah, once we get that full structure of movement, take a few breaths here. And you can hold your hips, you can put your hands back to the bolster and kind of scoop it up and tip forward or back to your blankets. And it seems like it's not doing a lot maybe by the appearance, but there is some interesting pathways kind of being created in the leg. Now, when you come back up and you center your spine up, you'll push the blanket back. So I would take the top blanket off, okay? And then you're going to push the flat one blanket a little bit back. And as you move your left foot in towards the right shin. Then we can get our blocks off to the side. Wanted to take this step by step with this. Ball goes away. Okay, let's take our feet forward and move off of the bolster for a few moments. We're gonna do a little core. So you're gonna put your sand on your feet. I think we all have sand of some type of weight. And then we'll sit in front of the bolster. So down on the ground. And I like to hold the sandbag handles for this. I find it to be really useful. I mean, I just love having the handles for this reason. So if you don't have a sandbag with handles, you would likely do what? You would take your belt and you would just put your belt over your sandbag. There's always a way around it. Always a way. Put your belt there and you hold. So you can get around that. All right, so now we hold on and we lean back. And we've got this buffer, we've got the bolster. So it's like, it's tempting to just lie back, I'm sure, but pull onto the handles. And then as you experience moving forward with the heart, just think about heart forward, like heart pours forward. And then lean back. And let's just play with this tilting. So not to spend too much energy on it. Are my feet perfect? Your feet are perfect with the sand on them. They have to stay somewhat together to keep your sand across them. If your heels are highly like spread outwards, the toes are in, that could be something to notice and to keep them parallel. Okay. So now the next couple of times you move your heart center, the appearance is basically you're holding some sandbag handles and you're going forward and back. That should be all you're calculating here. Getting some core time. Next time you come up, I want you to keep the sandbag handles, hold them, don't cut them off. And then as you lean back, find that sweet spot where you feel your sitting bones, but you're not really rounding out of them yet. So I want you to hold that and then let go of the handles and bring the arms just forward of the knees, the hands forward of the knees, maybe not your whole arm. Okay. So feel that positioning. Now add a ball or a block if you don't have a ball. The ball's nice because it's a responsive surface, so you can squeeze it and you actually get some energy coming back into your legs when you push into the ball. Block does some, but we have a ball if we have the ball, use it. So now come forwards, reaching, inhale, and exhale, lean back. Squeeze and move forwards. Squeeze and lean back. Squeeze and lift and shift forward. And squeeze and shift back. Remove the ball and lift up to get your sand and then place it in your lap. And now, don't follow insensitive instructions. Come up to sit on your bolster. You got your blocks beside you and your blanket at the back, and you'll roll onto your back. And once you lift up and put your sand to your ribs, you're going to scoot your tail space. And if you don't like your sand on you right now, you can put it on the side for a while. But I want you to have that waist space. So it feels like it's tracking and lengthening. After that core work, this might feel really nice. So take a sandbag, scoop up the knees, bring the sand around to the soles of your feet. Take a proper amount of separation with the feet on the sandbag so that it doesn't fall off one side or it doesn't fall in the center. And then as you have that lift of the legs, you might feel your rib barrel. And you know, this isn't really an area that you would likely really palpate and massage like you would the side of your leg or the back side layer. Kind of interesting. It's very hardy tissue, you know, here in the bones, a lot of bone stuff. So just notice that the bones like feeling outside of them, this successful circulation happening right now is useful for that area to feel settled. So open out the arms, doing what you feel is necessary with the arms in goalpost or straight open. And rest your eyes back into your brain and making that commitment to the in and out breath. You kind of come full circle in this spinal. So we'll have a nice back series to complete the sequence. So giving this legs up variation several moments. You can flex your feet. You can attempt to do more with that. And you can also feel your core and find what is the right awareness for my legs to feel good, because it's a lot of leg work. Quite a bit of intensity for your leg beams. Right now it's your sole beams, right? It's your soles of your feet up, side down. Okay. Now with the knees bending, and as they descend, feel the back leg lengthen. Feel a lot of opening through the back circulation of the legs. And as you take that sand aside, maybe you drop it, maybe you toss it. You're going to get a feel for where it is, so you know where to get it for upcoming experiences. And then get a ball or a block between the knees and spend a moment here when they go side to side. The knees kind of go just windshield wiper the legs. Now, is it the leg or is it, it's got a hip attachment, so it does seem to cycle through the hip body as well. So now when you feel you go to one side, I want you to explore the most mild squeeze of that ball. So it would be accurate if you didn't squeeze the ball. So I don't want you to try to push into the ball excessively. You're feeling the body tipping side to side. So you're crossing through the middle to the other side. And go at a kind of a respectful pace for you to explore, right? You're kind of improvising this movement cycle and just being a little curious about how the knees go to one side and what sides of the back, what parts of the back flesh is lengthening. And then when you go through the center, now let's try squeezing the ball when we're in the middle or the block, and then relax that squeeze and go to the other side and really feel that you're lengthening that lower back by moving the knees towards the other side. Okay, give it a couple more times. So we get a feel of our back, this area clearly defined, but we were going to go into bridge pose next. So I want you to kind of notice that this kind of flap of tissues is sort of overstated sometimes, that lower back layer. So I want us to move a little bit higher in our understanding of the back to the thoracic and kind of feeling that mid-vertebral. Now, as you come back center, just keep the ball between the knees if you can. If it falls away, go crawl after it. But when the knees go in towards the chest, you're going to push the bolster and Be sensitive to the amount of time you want to keep hovering over the ground with your pelvis. No problem. No judgment. Maybe you like that hover. And breathing. And then as soon as your hands push the bolster a little bit farther away from your rear so it's not under you, just let your feet relax down onto that bolster. And I'm going to just push it a little farther forward so I know my knees aren't squeezing in. The legs are in more of a constructive rest. Sometimes constructive rest is taught, obviously with feet on floor would be typical. Sometimes it's with the legs up on something like the bolster. But basically that spine is supported here. Okay, so push down into your feet, lift into your hips, and send your arms back overhead. And if you don't like the blanket, get rid of it. It's up to you. Lower the spine down. Try to really ease through as many parts of the spine as you can. Okay, and then inhale, lift up the hips. And I would enjoy going slow through this. There's no reason to rush through your poses. There's a handful that we're going through at the end here. So just enjoy how you cruise through your back zone and that control of the legs right now to support that movement. Okay, so lots of leg controls. So once you push down into your feet and you lift up your hips, I don't know where everybody's at with the pacing, but you get a feel that there's always further to go with bridge, always further. So accepting where you're researching your back. But what I want to do is kind of not break the bridge, but we're gonna break off from continuing this repetition, and we'll do a bridge pose in between the twists. So I want you to take the ball away it still stays really close. And you'll push your bolster with your feet. So nudge it over with your feet to the right side of your mat. Lower the right leg down and cross the left leg to the bolster. Now, when you nudge your back over, you kind of roll the leg crossing. You add a ball to the sacrum and then add a sandbag to the outer left leg. Unless you get here and go, this feels like enough in my hip, then the choice of a sandbag would not be ideal if it's already enough. Okay, so get a feel of that support of your sand. And then as the arms enter this shape, you'll feel cactus, or you'll let your arms be very comfy, which is probably different on each arm for you. And then as the weight into that left leg deepens, notice if it feels like it gets more intense or if it just kind of stays the same for the hip. Yeah, it seems to get kind of pulled and opened, and then it stops deepening, but you still feel that pull. Enter into breath. Simply spilling the weight of the left leg into the bolster. Leg spillage. Okay, now we've got the left side of the back. Maybe it's got a little bit of openness from this position. I want you to kind of visualize that left side having some space. Even if that's all you visualize is the word space, that's okay. And then as you take off the props that are on you, And you're gonna roll onto back. Now there's nothing under your feet for this bridge, so there's benefits of that too. Now, when you lift up your hips, I want you to let the arms be beside you like robot arms, so the hands are lifted straight up from the elbows, of course, and you're pushing down into your feet and your elbows. Now, what's in between, varies on its capacity to lift. So press down and then feel when you lift your heels up. Now the weight progresses back into your upper back. Your hips lift? Well, they only lift if you try. They don't just automatically lift if you push a button. But push down into the roots of the toes and then lower your heels. Lift up the hips a bit so you're trying to scoop under and then lower the spine. Really try to inch down your spine. Okay. Now bring your knees one at a time in towards your chest. Scoop them up with hands versus like elbows crossing, just the hands. And then feel that you're lengthening into your back. Yeah, it may occur to you, it may not, but feel that there's length in the back. And you can swing your feet back over the upper body if that feels more back length. Whatever feels good. Sometimes just keeping the cannonball shape works fine for us to let the back lengthen. Lower down the feet and then take that bolster. You might use your hands on this one to move it over. You might scoot your feet to shuffle it to the other side. And then before we get onto that bolster with our right leg, I want you to bring your feet straight up. Well, I probably shouldn't move my bolster in your way. I can't see it too well. Okay, legs straight up, feet, legs, everything up from the hips down, straight up to the ceiling. And then reach your hands so they're off the floor, right? They're reaching downwards past the hips towards the foot of your mat, hands off the floor, hovering. And then I want you just to get a feel of the feet flexing. Your head stays down. We're not lifting our head up here. But lower down the legs as a pair. Kind of visualize they're buckled up here. They're held together with a belt. And as we let the legs lower, we're only going maybe to 60 degrees. Some of us may stay still at the 90 and just a little bit down. And then I want you to come back up, lower the hands down so that the shoulders can relax. Okay. Bend your knees and then lift the hands up and then let the legs go forward so you feel that tilt in the waist, but try to keep the back muscles at the very base of the spine and spreading out. You want to keep those roots relaxing down. I don't know if relaxing is the proper, not truthful. And then bring your knees back in. Okay, now hands stay off the floor if possible. Stretch the right leg straight down, push through your heel so the leg is hovering off the ground. And then switch right knee in, switch left leg stretches down. The bolster would have been nice underneath the leg. You could have just held it up. I could cheat and use that, huh? Left leg straight down off the floor, hands off the floor. A lot of energy, strength, pushing through the interior shoulder here. And then bring the left knee in. Feet down or hands down. Okay, get the bolster so it's over on that left side. And right leg is going to cross over to the bolster. So left leg is basically situated straight down. Cross the right leg, do all your tricks that you have to ease and glide through the hip. All right, and then we've got some props here to add. We got a ball for the sacrum. We have a sandbag for the outer right leg. And if you like to put sand, for instance, on your arm, that feels good for you to take that. That feels really nice to open. And that does directly help some people more. So it's up to you if you've used that before in class and you want to repeat. But open out through that right arm and let your head roll to the opposite side the leg is crossing. And really use the weight Feel if you move it down towards the knee, or maybe some of us will like it right up towards the hip. Up to you. Yeah, let the arms open. Breathing. You know, when you work on that rest and repeat of breath, sometimes you back off out of exercising the lungs and you kind of you mellow out in some ways. Even though you're working on that intensity in the hip, let yourself be mellow with it. Mellow is okay. And when that distribution of weight is in the waist twisting, feel the settling of the movement of the belly, lifting and lowering. And then moving the sand, the ball. And we center ourselves back to the knees, moving themselves towards your center of gravity, which is your pelvis. So you get a feel of your knees moving in towards your center. And when they pull in, feel what moves to get them in is your back. It's kind of has orders. You're giving it orders. So we're going to roll up and put our bolster up on some blocks. And when you do elevate that bolster, it will feel so important now. You might put your blocks up to the highest setting. You might decide to get your legs up the wall. You might do a chair shoulder stand. You don't have to follow this exact shape for your finale. But sometimes it's nice to get a little bit of a roll on top of the bolster. Remember, practice should have some repetition, some repeating of poses that you're used to. And then when you are lying on the back, you could also change the blanket up. You could turn it so it's length spine-wise. And I like that sometimes. It's subtle. It's a subtle difference in your breathing, but it's subtle enough that you know your lungs are in the back anyway. So as you travel back on the spine, I guess the one thing is if you're short, it works perfect because you know that you're not going to go past the blanket length. But if you're tall, you might need to push the blanket back a bit so that your head rests on it. You don't want our head off of the blanket. So take some time to adjust or not do the same thing I'm doing, that's fine. And then absorbing the potential of your breath, right? That's a nice key. So it doesn't matter what pose you've chosen. Maybe you're in child's pose, but you could be in any of these variations and feeling that breath is a lifting force internally, right? It expands. And we know the alignment of breath is working. It will likely go in that direction down to the belly, right? The movement of the diaphragm shifts so that the abdomen softens. And as the exhalation cycles, the abdomen draws towards the spine. And it goes more than that, right? It goes towards the heart. The feeling where the weight of your head is back. Even if you haven't started to tap into how your body has shifted from practice, Usually as you approach daily habits, you might notice that, but the obvious shift is the brain, relaxing the eyes back. Now, if you have no sand on you, which might be some of us, you can bring your feet together, your knees out, lifted on the bolster if you're using that prop below. Depends on your prop. If it's the wall or a chair, you can do the same thing. And let the knees get a feeling of now the Badakarasana. It's different when the traction is the feet are up, upside down, right? So we do Badakarasana in all the different angles. Some classes, like today we did the angle when we're sitting, right? The angle when we're reclining with our back lifted, and then with our back fairly flat with the legs up here. So what might be interesting is it starts where you feel the adductors and they really flush, and you don't feel it as much after 30 seconds or so. So when the legs catch this sensation, the openness, feel the natural arch of the back with the breath. And then as the knees position back in, if you've got a blanket under your spine, you certainly are not going to bring your knees to your chest, physically pull them. You'll let the legs swing over to the side. And then use your hands and also your movement of your spine and your torso to help push you up. So get all those movement fibers in. And then you might come up to take a seated spiral. So take a seat and get a feeling of your ribs moving and a little bit of motion, right? So you might let your head tilt down and just feeling the seated spinal spiral. And as the weight processes from one sitting bone to the other. And then as you go side to side, you let your spine feel that it has lift and some energy moving through the body. Let the hands lift up. Maybe you feel like moving them up overhead, separating together. Maybe you feel as if moving your arms in front of the heart is perfect to the hands together. So let's connect and feeling the shift inside each of us collectively and breathing in together to feel that connection. And with exhale, bowing into your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Bye, Nicole. Thank you.